Om Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama Gopika Jeevana Smaranam Govinda Govinda Shuklam Bharadaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasanna Vadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashantahe Namo Namah Sadgurubhyo Namo Namaha Namo Namah Sadgurubhyo Namo Namaha Satchidananda Rupaya Vishwotpatyadi Hetave Tapatraya Vinashaya Shri Krishnaya Vayam Numaha Yam pravrajantamanupetamapetakratyam dvaipayano virahakatara ajuhava putreti tanmayataya taravobhineduhu tam sarvabhuta hridayam munimanatosmi yasvanubhavamakila shrutisaramekam adhyatmadipam atititirshatam tamondham samsarinam karunayaha purana guhyam Tam Vyasasunum Upayami Gurum Muninam Yogindraya Namastasmai Shukaya Brahma Rupine Samsara Sarpadashtam Yo Vishnuratam Muchate Kalavyala Mukhagrasa Trasa Nirnasha Hetave Srimad Bhagavatam Shastram Kalaukirena Bhashitam Etasmadaparam Kinchitam Manashuddhena Vidyate Janmantare bhavet punyam tadha bhagavatam labhet jnana vairagya sampurnan hari bhakti parayanan purvacharyataham vande sampradaya pravartakan bhagavan nama samrajya lakshmi sarvasva vigraham Srimad Bodhendra Yogindra Deshikendram upasmahe Kalikalochitam dharmam नाम संकीर्तनात्मकं निर्णेतुम् अवतीर्णं तं प्रेमिकं सद्गुरुं भजे हरे रामेति कृष्णेति नाम संकीर्तनं सदा लोकक्षेमाय कुर्वन्तं प्रेमिकं सद्गुरुं भजे जन्माद्यस्य यतोऽन्वयादितरतश्चार्तेषभिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्महृदाय आदिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः तेजो वारिमृदां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि धर्मः प्रोज्झितकैतवोऽत्र परमो निर्मत्सराणां सतां वेद्यं वास्तवमत्र वस्तु शिवदं तापत्रयोन्मूलनम् श्रीमद्भागवते महामुनिकृते किं वा परैरीश्वरः सद्यो हृद्यवरुध्यतेऽत्र कृतिभिः शुश्रूषिभिस्तक्षणात् निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं शुकमुखात् अमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् श्रीमद्भागवताख्योऽयं प्रत्यक्षः कृष्ण एव हि स्वीकृतोऽसि मया नाथ मुक्त्यर्थं भवसागरे मनोरथो मदीयोऽयं सफलः सर्वदा त्वया निर्विघ्नेनैव कर्तव्यो दासोऽहं तव केशव श्रीहरये नमः श्रीहरये नमः श्रीहरये नमः गोपिका जीवनस्मरणं गोविन्दा गोविन्दा सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय. Welcome everyone. Since it's only a 1 hour class, we won't do the review today, but I'm going to finish the meaning of the 21st, right? And then we'll try to finish 21st chapter as well. 29th, sorry. So just, I know we started the meaning, but I'll kind of recap since we had a week off, right? So this is here in the previous chapter, right? Kapila Muni talked about, we saw the Yoga Mishra Bhakti. So Bhakti, but combined with the yoga, the path of yoga, path of Ashtanga yoga. He had mixed both of those and talked about it. So now he's shifting from that to pure bhakti yoga of devotional service, right? So that's why even though Kapila Muni spoke about Sankhya, which in the current world of Sankhya, when you say people detach bhakti from that, but Kapila's theory of Sankhya, bhakti was always part of it, and he talks more about bhakti in this separately, right? So Devahuti, she asked about the questions which we saw last time. So when Kapila is beginning, right, he talks about the different types of bhakti that we saw. He saw the bhakti where somebody is praying, you still have bhakti towards Bhagavan, but you also have anger towards others. You're envious of others. You're violent towards others. You still have a lot of tamasic qualities in you. You're seeing yourself separate from others. So he says that is bhakti mixed with tamas, the tamas, right? Nature of it. That is one bhakti. That is still bhakti. You still have devotion, right? Then he says bhakti that is mixed with rajas, which means desire and passion. So where you're doing all these things, you're doing homam, you're doing giving money to charity, you're praying, you're doing all of these things, but you have a motive for all of this. Your motive for that is, I need something in return. I need a job. I need, something to happen, to get married or children, whatever that may be, right? So you have something you're expecting in return. That is bhakti, which is mixed with rajas. Then there is a bhakti, which is pure sattvika bhakti, which is you're doing all of these things, but you're doing it again with an intention. But the intention is not material in nature. The intention is, you want to eradicate all your karmas that you might have done, with something you want to eradicate all of that, or you want to create good karmas for future, or you want to get liberated. So all of that is bhakti, which is actually mixed with sattva guna, so it's sattvika bhakti. But he says the pure devotee is the one who doesn't have any of those things, right? So he says that's where he talks about, the flow of Ganges, which we spoke last time. It's when Ganges is going into the thing, it doesn't care about what is on the way. Its duty is to reach the ocean, right? And it doesn't care about whether there's a downhill, which means it can accelerate, or if there's a tree which is blocking. So which means that whether you are happy, whether you are sad, whether you have gained something, whether you have lost something, your bhakti cannot change. The bhakti has to remain fixed, right? So that is the true bhakti, he says. That is the greatest of the bhakti, which is even greater than the sattvika bhakti, which is actually there. And he talked about the 5 ways in which you can, merge with the Lord. One is you remain in the same loka, one is you attain his form, one is you merge into him, you're close to him. He says even the true devotee doesn't care even about any of those things, and then he remains steadfast, right? So that is the first portion that he's actually explaining of the types of bhaktis which are there. And then then he kind of break it into 3 parts. One is the type of bhakti. Then he talks about the stages in devotion, right? How your devotion progresses. That's the second topic we'll talk. And the third one is he talks about how the consciousness levels, that is where we are as human, how that grows, how the consciousness levels grows, right? In terms of bhakti. So in the second one, he talks about in the beginning, right? What we all do, we all go to temple, right? And when we are small, right, we don't know why we are going to the temple. We don't know what is anything. We don't have any information. All we do is, okay, I have to go to the temple, and then I have to do namaskaram in the temple, and I have to offer worship. He says that's the simplest starting. That's a beginner bhakti. You don't know why you're doing, you don't know what you're doing, but you're doing it because somebody is telling you to do it, right? He says, even then, that is the first one. And he says, even when you're doing all of that stuff, even now, when you're doing all of that stuff, he says, always remember that Bhagavan is there everywhere, because that is the concept, like he says, not just in the temple, that will come when you advance, but even when you're going to the temple, you always tell everybody that everybody is same, right? Don't differentiate among all of that. And, he talks about how, a pure devotee behaves, right? A pure devotee says anybody who's superior to them in knowledge and in devotion, they always respect them. That is one. Even your peers, you have to be equal. You should not try to differentiate. You should never think that you are over somebody, right? Just because you have more bhakti. He says, do not compare the bhakti, right? Saying that, I have more bhakti than you, or I do more things than you. He says, do not do any of that stuff, and then says, even if somebody who's below you, you should show compassion, right? You should not feel that you are better than them, which is natural. Then he says the next stage, as you're kind of going into this bhakti, is you start hearing Shravanam, right? You start hearing about all those things. So you go to the temple without your knowledge, you'll hear initially, but then later on, he says you will want to hear it, and then you will do Kirtanam. You will say the name of the Lord, right? He says all of this means you're progressing in your bhakti, because initially you were just going for a namesake, and now we are beginning to do more of these things. And he says the association again is very important. Like we always said, the association with the right satsangam is extremely important. And then he also clarifies that while you have to associate with people who are devoted, because that will help you get more devoted, do not look down on people who are not devoted. Okay. But he clarifies one thing. He says you don't have to look down, you don't have to have that arrogance, but he says as much as possible, if you can, stay away. And the reason he says you stay away is not because you are good or they are bad. It says when you are with people who don't believe in bhakti or devotion, the conversation goes in the wrong direction, which means you are now spending your time on unrelated things, not talking about bhakti, which is waste for you, right? That is all the context there. It is not to be taken as I am better, so I'm not going to spend time with you. It is just that when I'm going with you, I spend talking, having useless conversations, which I don't have the time for. Right, I would rather spend my time in doing something else. So he says that is equally important of how we are doing it. Anyway, so as you're advancing in the stage of this bhaktis, so he says once you kind of and doing the smaranam and kirtanam and hearing and chanting and all of this, he says automatically your consciousness will start getting purified. You'll start getting more and more closer. So at this time, a point will come where you are naturally drawn to these things. Right. So you will naturally feel like, oh, I want to actually go learn something. I want to actually go chant something. Right. Previously, you were just pulled in mandatorily, but now you feel like I want to do it, right? Out of your own effort, right? Out of your own interest, you want to go do this, right? So he says that is the various stages as it goes through. Then once you reach that stage, then he says the next stage is at all of these times is you still are just focused on your bhakti, right? You're still doing that. He says, but you have to very quickly reach a stage that you are not seeing God only in temples. So you should come to a point where you truly realize that I don't have to always go to the temple to only pray. I can pray anywhere, right? Because Bhagavan is there everywhere. So even if I'm in the street, I should be able to pray because Bhagavan is there. Even if I'm in my office room praying right now, I should be able to pray, right? That is a very important realization that you cannot associate Bhagavan with just an idol, right? That is important to start with, but later on you have to progress to realize that that is not the case. He is there, he or she is there everywhere, right? So that is extremely important. And he says just like how there is what you call a trash lying somewhere, and that smell comes to you because the air carries it, right? It'll eventually reach your nose. He says bhakti, wherever you sit, you could be sitting in your bathroom and then you could be thinking about God, it will reach Bhagavan, right? Because that devotion will carry it to Bhagavan no matter where you are. So that's the realization you have to come, and all of that only comes with more and more bhakti. You will start realizing it. And the other most important thing he talks about is to realization that the Paramatma is there in every single thing. Like we realized every single sub or atom has a Paramatma. And he says anybody who doesn't truly realize that hasn't reached that elevated state of bhakti. Right? Because you feel like I am different from you. Okay, physically, all of that, we could be different, but you have to still realize that Paramatma is there in everybody. So he says just going to the temple and praying and doing all of these things, but not realizing that there's a Paramatma in everybody, Bhagavan is there in every single thing, still means you haven't reached that level of maturity, right? It's a progression, he says, and that's okay. If any of most of us don't have it, that's totally fine. He says gradually you will actually start getting that progression, right? And then you will also come, because when you think of the greatest Paramahamsas, they also don't do a lot of the rituals, right, that we actually do, right? It's because they have come to the realization that I don't need to do rituals to connect to Bhagavan, right? I don't need to do that, right? It is something that is required for us to connect right now, because that is our way of connecting. But the greatest people, just because someone doesn't do rituals doesn't mean they don't like Bhagavan, or they cannot connect to Bhagavan, right? Because they are able to look beyond these rituals in connecting as well. So nothing is right or wrong, he says. It is just how you are connecting to it and how you are able to look at it. But doing all of these things, but still not seeing the Paramatma in everybody, he says is a problem, right? So that is kind of the second section that he talks about in terms of the various gradients of bhakti. And he says you finally have to reach a stage where even though you are not sitting in front of the temple, or even if you're not sitting in front of Bhagavan, or no matter where you are able to look at everything and us relate that to Bhagavan. That is the highest state of bhakti one can actually reach, right? In terms of the gradation of bhakti. Then the third topic he talks about is how we cannot put this human life to waste, right? Because, like he said, is the consciousness is there in everything that is animate or inanimate, anything that can move, even something as a stone has a level of consciousness, but the level of consciousness is very, very low, right? So he talks about this gradation of consciousness, right? Where he says that because the Bhagavan, the Paramatma is there in every subatomic particle which vibrates, which means even a stone that is there has got the same God energy. However, the stone does not have a consciousness which is mature, right? So he says anything which is a living entity has got more consciousness than anything that is a stone, because a stone cannot react to anything. So, and among the living entities, he talks about anything which shows basic life symptoms. Like people say, why are you eating plants? Plants also have life. Yeah, plants also have consciousness. But the consciousness that the plants have is very different, right? They only have basic consciousness, which is growth. So they can just grow, right? So, they, when the sunlight comes, they can look towards the sunflower, can look towards the sun. It has basic consciousness, right? It cannot react like how an animal can react, right? So that is a difference between the consciousness in a plant, which he says is still got consciousness, it still can grow, but it does not have any feelings, right? It cannot react to various things, right? So he says that is the lowest level. And from the, and we all have gone through these things, right? And then he says, when you go to animal, there are different levels of consciousness, right? There are animals like fish, which can detect, which has basic awareness. It knows I have to live. When it sees a big fish, it knows I have to run away, right? It has that level of consciousness. It knows I have to eat to survive, right? It has that level of consciousness, right? So even a fish has consciousness, but it has a limited level of consciousness. Then it says, then you go into advanced things like birds, mammals, etc., which can make choices, which can remember, which can learn how to do things, which is more advanced consciousness. And then he goes into very extreme detail about, some that the anything which can only react to touch, like you take a worm which is actually there, you touch the worm can feel it that you are touching, it can sense the danger, right? So it has that level of consciousness, it only has a sense of touch. But you have something else which can also, a butterfly which is going and sitting on a flower knows which flower to go sit in to get the best nectar. So it has a sense of taste. So when you think of the indriyangal that we have, these indriyangals are getting mature as you are going up, right? So consciousness is growing up because now it knows how to taste better, right? So then it says, okay, now that's a butterfly example. Then it takes a dog. A dog can taste what is good, what is bad. A dog can also smell really good, right? So it has additional consciousness which is required for it to interpret that smell and make choices. So something which can smell is greater than something which can taste. And then the next thing is something which can hear and respond, which dogs also can, but I'm kind of giving that example, right? Like birds, parrot, it can hear what you are telling and it can repeat back, right? So it has an advanced level of sensory perception and advanced level of consciousness. So with that, he says it keeps going, right, from one to another, and he talks about how, two-legged, four-legged animals, all of this, but the net he's saying is the consciousness keeps growing up, and finally you reach the human stage where you have all of the consciousness because all our indriyangals are working, right? All our sense organs are working for a normal person, right? And then we also know what needs to be done. A lot of these animals, while all the sensory organs are working, it may not know that I have to spend my time praying, I have to spend my time in devotion. It doesn't have that knowledge, but we have that knowledge, right? But we may not put it to use, but we have that knowledge. We are already in a level of advanced state which we know about, right? So now in this, within the human itself, he says he provides gradation of consciousness, right? So he says one who has knowledge. With knowledge, he means knowledge of the divine and knowledge of all of that. And one who is spiritual, like I said, the word brahmana is loosely used. That doesn't mean somebody who wears a punal, right? It means somebody who has the knowledge, and someone who's spiritual, loosely referred in that term, is more advanced because there are a lot of people who are not doing anything, right? Which means their consciousness is not mature enough to realize the purpose of why they are. For us, explicitly or implicitly or indirectly somehow we have become better over several janmams, right? So we are doing that. Then he says the next is somebody who learns all these Vedas and Upanishads, because now they are actually getting into little bit, because those are more advanced knowledge which is actually there. That is people who chant, and then he differentiates people who understand, because merely chanting is the first step, because everybody first gets into pure chanting and then you get into understanding, right? So which means you have higher level, and then the person who is able to dispel doubts, on this understanding, but also answering and all of that, so he kind of goes in. And then he says amongst all of these things, finally, ultimately, not this is all not enough either. You also have to behave, right? Like we spoke about the Ashtanga Yoga, the initial one, right? Yama, Niyama, and all of that stuff is behaving good to others. So you could do all of these things, but then if you are being an atrocious person or behaving bad towards others or doing ahimsa, he says that negates. That means you are truly not mature enough, right? In terms of consciousness. He talks about how this gradation of consciousness is working. And ultimately, he again comes back to the same thing, is the perfect devotee who is there, even if somebody knows all the Vedas and Upanishads, and even if somebody is able to dispel all the doubts, if there is another person who's pure bhakti, which absolutely nothing in return, not wanting anything, that is the greatest of the devotees still. So that doesn't change, right? Like we saw earlier, is you don't need to know any of these things. If you have that uninterrupted love with absolute bhakti, with nothing in return, he says that is the highest level one can actually reach to get into liberation or to merge with Bhagavan, right? So that is kind of the gradation of consciousness that he talks about here. So anyway, we'll stop there. It's about 30 stanzas. And then the few other stanzas I'll explain on a stanza by stanza basis. But anyway, so he just talks about the various levels of bhakti and how you progress, right, in this thing. Okay, so how much time we have? About 8:54 means about 40 minutes, right? 36 minutes. Okay. All right. Any two, you can just volunteer. Any who wants to first two, and then we will do another. Okay, Satya and okay, Sindhuji. Okay. We'll do 18 minutes. Okay. So we'll start from 21. Aham sarveshu bhuteshu, comma, bhutatma vastitas sada, tam avajnaya mam martyah, comma, kurutercha vidambanam. Kurutercha is one word, and then vidambanam. Aham sarveshu bhuteshu bhutatma vastitas sada, tam avajnaya mam martyah, kurutercha vidambanam.
अहं सर्वेषु भूतेषु भूतात्मावस्थितः सदा तम अव तम अवज्ञाय मामर्त्यः कुरुतेर्चार्विडम्बनम्
अहं सर्वेषु भूतेषु भूतात्मावस्थितः सदा तमवज्ञाय मामर्त्यः कुरुतेर्चाविडम्बनम्
यो मां सर्वेषु भूतेषु, comma, संतम आत्मानम ईश्वरम hitvarcham bhajate maudyat. So the that is there, we're just going to break there. Maudyat it, comma, bhasmanyeva juhoti saha. Yo mam sarveshu bhuteshu santamatmanamishwaram hitvarcham bhajate maudyat bhasmanyeva juhoti saha.
यो मां सर्वेषु भूतेषु सन्तम् आत्मानमीश्वरं हित्वार्चां भजते मोट्यात् भस्मन्येव जुहोति सः
यो मां सर्वेषु भूतेषु सन्दमात्मानमीश्वरं हित्वार्चां भजते मौढ्यात् भस्मन्येव जुहोति सः
द्विशतः परकाये मां, comma, मानिनो भिन्न दर्शिनः भूतेषु बद्ध वैरस्य, comma, स मनः शान्तिं ऋच्छति.
राजेश स वा न वा
Oh, sorry, न मनः शान्तिं ऋच्छति. द्विशतः परकाये मां मानिनो भिन्न दर्शिनः भूतेषु बद्ध वैरस्य न मनः शान्तिं ऋच्छति.
द्विशतः परकाये मां मानिनो भिन्नदर्शिनः भूतेषु बद्धवैरस्य न मनः शान्तिमृच्छति
द्विषदः परगाये मां मानिनो भिन्नदर्शिनः भूतेषु बद्धवैरस्य न मनःशान्तिमृच्छति
aham ucchavachairdravyehi comma kriyayotpannayanage, that's one word, kriyayotpannayanage naiva tushyer chitorchayam. The entire word is together because you have the two s symbols there. Tushyer chitorchayam comma bhuta gramavamaninaha aham ucchavachairdravyehi kriyayotpannayanage naiva tushyer chitorchayam भूतग्रामावमानिनः
अहम् उच्चावचैर्द्रव्यैः क्रिययोत्पन्नया नगे नैव तुष्येर्चितोच्चार्यां भूतग्रामावमानिनः
अहमुच्चावचैर्द्रव्यैः क्रिययोत्पन्नया नघे नैव तुष्यर्चिदोर्चायां भूतग्रामावमानिनः
अर्चादा वर्चयेत तावत्. I cannot break that too much. Archada varchayet tavat. The D that is there, we're going to break it into it and E. Tavat, comma. Ishwaram mam swa karma krite. Yavanna veda swa hridi, comma. Sarva bhuteshva vastitam.
Rajesh, could you say that first line breaking one more time?
Yeah. It's Archada varchayet. Varchayet tavat.
Yeah. Ta, right? So,
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Tavat.
Thank you, Rajesh.
अर्चाधा वर्षयेत् तावत् ईश्वरं मां स्वकर्म कृत यावन्न वेद स्वहृदि सर्वभूतेष्वस्थितम्
अर्चादावर्चयेत् तावत् ईश्वरं मा स्वकर्मकृत् यावन्न वेद स्वहृदि सर्वभूतेष्वस्थितम्
अर्चादावर्चयेत् तावद् ईश्वरं मां स्वकर्मकृत् यावन्न वेद सुहृदि सर्वभूतेष्वस्थितम्
आत्मनश्च परस्यापि कॉमा यः करोत्यन्तरोधरं one word करोत्यन्तरोधरं तस्य भिन्न दृशो मृत्युः विसर्गा कॉमा next line if you have the ir that goes away bidadhe bayamulbanam आत्मनश्च परस्यापि यः करोत्यन्तरोधरं तस्य भिन्न दृशो मृत्युः विदधे भयमुल्बनम्
आत्मनश्च परस्यापि यः करोत्यन्तरोदरं तस्य भिन्नदृशो मृत्युः विदधे भयमुल्बनम्
आत्मनश्च परस्यापि यत्करोत्यरोदरं तस्य भिन्नदृशो मृत्युः विदधे भयमुल्बणम्.
Just briefly he's saying that the fear of death will come only if you think of everybody as different. If you think of everybody as same and the same Paramatma, you won't have it. Like in next chapter he's going to go more into in the life leaves and all of that stuff, right? The fear and all of that, so we'll cover it at that point. अथ मां सर्वभूतेषु भूतात्मानं कृतालयम् अर्हयेत् दानमानाभ्यां मैत्र्याभिन्नेन चक्षुषा अथ मां सर्वभूतेषु भूतात्मानं कृतालयम् अर्हयेत् दानमानाभ्यां मैत्र्याभिन्नेन चक्षुषा
अथ मां सर्वभूतेषु भूतात्मानं कृतालयम् अर्हये दानमानाभ्यां मैत्र्याभिन्नेन चक्षुषा
अथ मां सर्वभूतेषु भूतात्मानं कृतालयम् अर्हये दानमानाभ्यां मैत्र्याभिन्नेन चक्षुषा
जीवाश्रेष्ठा ह्यजीवानां ततः प्राणभृतः ततः सचित्ताः प्रवराः that is goes away प्रवराः विसर्गा कॉमा ततश्चेन्द्रिय वृत्तयः जीवाश्रेष्ठा ह्यजीवानां ततः प्राणभृतः शुभे ततः सचित्ताः प्रवराः ततश्चेन्द्रियवृत्तयः
जीवा श्रेष्ठाय जीवानां ततः प्राणभृतः शुभे ततः सजिताः प्रवराः ततश्चेन्द्रियवृत्तयः
On second line la sachittah
ओ
andata
सचिताः okay. ततः
जी-
सचिताः okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, ma'am.
जीवा श्रेष्ठा ह्यजीवानां ततः प्राणभृतः शुभे ततः सचित्ता प्रवराः ततश्चेन्द्रियवृत्तयः
tatrapi sparsha vedibhyah mama pravara rasavedinah tebhyo gandhavidas shresthaah put a visarga comma is goes away tatash shabda vido varaha. So shrestha means greater, so that's why he's just comparing here that one who sparsham, one who responds to touch, versus one who can differentiate rasa vedinaha, who can discriminate between the taste, right, identify the difference in the taste, and then gandham, so smell, and then shabda means word. So the various levels there.
So Rajesh, in the five senses, like is touch considered lower than taste and then
Yeah,
like that?
yeah.
Okay.
So the touch is the lowest, rasam, which is the taste, is the next. Next is the gandham, which is the smell. Then is the shabdam, which is the words, right, sound, noise. And then the then the eyes, which can, because it can differentiate the various things with the eyes, right? Which is because that is how he says the sensory, you'll be able to leverage more by doing it, right, with those things.
Okay. Thank you.
तत्रापि स्पर्शवेदिभ्यः प्रवरा रसवेदिनः तेभ्यो गन्धविदः श्रेष्ठाः ततः शब्दविदो वराः.
तत्रापि स्पर्शवेदिभ्यः प्रवरा रसवेदिनः तेभ्यो गन्धविदः श्रेष्ठाः ततः शब्दविदो वराः
तत्रापि स्पर्शवेदिभ्यः प्रवरा रसवेदिनः तेभ्यो गन्धविदः श्रेष्ठाः ततः शब्दविदो वराः.
And just it's more from how your mind is getting used to process and what will help you to develop, he's talking about, right? That if you only can touch, he says the amount of processing that needs to happen and the amount of consciousness levels to get to spirituality is very low for you. But if you progress in these things, then you are able to do more, right? Which means you can more, your consciousness is higher levels for you to attain spiritual. That is what it is really talking about, right? Is because if you're able to see, then you are able to infer more things, right? You can think about, you can look at Bhagavan, you can contemplate on your mind, which is much better than if you can only touch, right? So that's the gradation. It doesn't mean one sense is better than the other. It's more related to what is required for the mind to process, primarily for you to attain spirituality, the level of consciousness.
Sorry, Rajesh, a quick question. It says it comes until Shabdam, right? So where is the next level of seeing?
Next paragraph. Rupa Beda Vidas Tatra, comma, Tatas Chobhaya Yotadaha, Tatas Chobhaya Todadaha, Tesham Bahupadah Sreshtaha, ish goes away, Visarga, comma, Chatush Padas Tato Dvipad.
Rajesh, bahupadash padafa visarga.
In the
Tesham bahupada and the visarga enna maru adu?
Because Shra is coming later, right? So ish padash ish
Ishtane.
Shreshtaha, yeah. Rupa bheda vidastatra tataschobhayato dadaha tesham bahupadash shreshtaha chatushpadastato dvipad.
Rupa beda vidastatra tatashobhayato dadaha tesham bahupada shreshtaha chatushpadastato dvipat.
रूपभेदविदस्तत्र ततश्चोभयदो ददः तेषां बहुपादा श्रेष्ठाः बहुपदा श्रेष्ठाः चतुष्पादस्तदोद्विवाद.
Tato varnascha chatvaraha, again that is goes away, chatvaraha visarga tesham brahmana uttamaha brahmaneshwapi vedagno, comma, hyartha Nyobhyadik. So that word abhyadikas is coming, but the S symbol is there. So we're just going to say it together. Hyartha nyobhyadikas tataha. You cannot break that too much. Tato varnascha chatvarah tesham brahmana uttamah brahmaneshvapi vedagno hyarthagnopyadikas tataha.
Oh, sorry. ततो वर्णाश्च चत्वारः तेषां ब्राह्मण उत्तमः ब्राह्मणेष्वपि वेदज्ञो ह्यज्ञोऽभ्यधिकस्ततः
Hyarthagnopyadikas.
ह्यर्थज्ञोऽभ्यधिकस्ततः
ततो वर्णाश्च चत्वारः तेषां ब्राह्मण उत्तमः ब्राह्मणेष्वपि वेदज्ञो ह्यर्थज्ञोऽभ्यधिकस्ततः.
Again, like I said, among the varnashramas, not to promote casteism or to say one caste is better than the other or the one varna is better. He's saying purely anybody who is using their knowledge for understanding and devotion is in that thing. We all do four things. We all are Shudras when we clean, we all make money, we are Vaishyas, we all are administrative positions, we are Kshatriyas. So we all do all sorts of things, right? So it is to really say that one who's using the knowledge the most towards spirituality and religious things is better than one who doesn't use his knowledge for that purpose, right? So that is the categorization he's doing here. Artha Nyat Samshaya Cheta, Tatas Shreyan Swakarma Kriti Mukta Sangas Tato Bhuyan, with the in there, next word starts with the A. Adhogda dharmamatmanah. Arthagnat samshaya cheta tata shreyan swakarma krite mukta sangas tato bhuyan adogdha dharmamatmanah.
Rajesh, quick question. Sorry. Samshaya cheta, single ta or double ta?
Double ta, it and ta, chet ta.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rajesh.
अर्थज्ञात् संशयच्चेथा ततः श्रेयान् स्वकर्मकृत् मुक्तसङ्गस्ततो भूयान् अधोक्ता धर्ममात्मनः.
अर्थज्ञात् संशयच्चेता तदश्रेयान् स्वकर्मकृत् मुक्तसङ्गस्ततो भूयान् अधोक्ता धर्ममात्मनः.
Tasman mayarpitashesha, and put a plus, kriyarthatma nirantarah mayarpitatmanah pumso, mai sanyasta karmanah na pashyami param bhutam, put a im there, next word a, akartus samadarshanat. Tasman may,
After Bhudam?
yeah, after bhutam, im and comma, yeah. Tasman mayyarpita shesha kriyarthatma nirantarah mayyarpitatmanah pumso mayi sanyasta karmanah na pashyami param bhutam akartus samadarshanaat.
तस्मान् मय्यर्पिता शेषक्रियार्थात्मा निरन्तरः मय्यर्पितात्मनः पुंसो मयि संयस्तकर्मणः न पश्यामि परं भूतम् अकर्तुः समदर्शनात्.
तस्मान् मय्यर्पिताशेषक्रियार्थात्मा निरन्तरः मय्यर्पितात्मनः पुंसो मयि सन्न्यस्तकर्मणः न पश्यामि परं भूतम् अकर्तुः समदर्शनात्.
Some of the words here are very clear amongst even all those four levels of brahmanas. Anyone who's my arpita, one who is completely surrendering every activity truly and not requiring anything in return, is of course the highest, right, amongst all of these things. And akartu samadarshanath, looking at everybody in exactly the same way and not discriminating or differentiating between the various people. Manasaitani bhutani, pranamed bahu manayan ishvaro jiva kalaya, pravishto bhagavaniti. Manasaitani bhutani pranamed bahumanayan ईश्वरो जीवकलया प्रविष्टो भगवानिति
मनसैतानि भूतानि प्रणमेत् बहुमानयन् ईश्वरो जीवकलया प्रविष्टो भगवानिति
मनसैदानि भूतानि प्रणमेत् बहुमानयन् ईश्वरो जीवकलया प्रविष्टो भगवानिति
भक्ति योगश्च मया मानव्युदीरितः ययोर एकतरेनैव पुरुषः पुरुषं व्रजेत. So here Kapila is saying this way, by applying this pure bhakti yoga, kind of what he's saying, by doing this, you can reach Purusham Jagat, you can attain liberation, you can reach the Purusha. Even in the context of the Sankhya Yoga, we said, how do you differentiate by not getting attached to Prakriti and all of the characteristics? Is by following Bhakti Yoga, you can get liberated purely. If you follow the right Bhakti Yoga in terms of the gradations, right? Bhakti yogascha maya manavyodiritaha yayor ekatarenaiva purushah purusham vrajet.
Bhakti yogascha maya manavयुदीरितः ययोर एकतरेणैव पुरुषः पुरुषं व्रजेत.
भक्ति योगश्च मया मानव्युदीरितः ययोरेकतरेणैव पुरुषः पुरुषं व्रजेत्.
Sorry, I forgot to switch. Okay, Shanti, you can be student, and Sriram, if you're available, you can be student.
Sure, sir.
Etat bhagavato rupam, brahmanah paramatmanah param pradhanam purusham, daivam karma vicheshtitam. Etad bhagavato rupam brahmanah paramatmanah param pradhanam purusham daivam karma vicheshtitam.
एतत् भगवतो रूपं ब्रह्मणः परमात्मनः परं प्रधानं पुरुषं दैवं कर्म विशेषितम्.
एतत् भगवतो रूपं ब्रह्मणः परमात्मनः परं प्रधानं पुरुषं दैवं कर्म विदेष्टितम्.
रूप भेदास्पदं दिव्यं, काल इत्यभिधीयते भूतानां महदादीनां, yato bhinna drisham bhayam. So he says one beautiful thing is that we are all afraid of time, right? Because as time progresses, we feel like, okay, our life will also come to an end over a period of time, right? And that things are going to happen. He says, but don't be afraid of time. You think of time itself as, like, earlier also Maitreya spoke about it, is you think of the time also as a tool of Bhagavan, so don't worry about time. No, people always worry about time, because even Brahma, when he was searching, when he was contemplating, he was getting worried that so much time is going on, I'm not able to find, right? He says that fear of time should not come, which also means fear of death, right? At the end of the day, is because you should even think of everything, even the time, as a tool of Bhagavan. So don't worry about it. Rupa bhedaspadam divyam kala ityabhidiyate bhutanam mahadadinam yato bhinna drisham bhayam.
रूपभेदास्पदं दिव्यं काल इत्यभिधीयते भूतानां महदादीनां यतो भिन्नदृशां भयम्.
रूपभेदास्पदं दिव्यं काल इत्यभिधीयते भूतानां महतादीनां यतो बिन्ददृशां भयम्.
Yontaf pravishya bhutani, bhutair, I'm just breaking at the tra, bhutair atyakilashrayah sa Vishnvaki. So this particular word, until that word asau, sau, that is coming, you put a comma there, the entire word has to be together. We cannot break that word. Okay. So it's a Vishvakyodi yajñosau. Okay. Have to say it together. Vishvakyodi yajñosau, Kala kalayatam prabhu. Yontaf pravishya bhutani bhutairatyakilashrayah स विष्णुवाख्योदियज्ञोऽसौ कालः कलयतां प्रभुः
योऽन्धः प्रविश्य भूतानि अत्यखिलाश्रयः स विश्वाक्योदियज्ञोऽसौ कालः कलयतां प्रभुः
योऽन्तः प्रविश्य भूतानि भूतैरत्यखिलाश्रयः स विष्णुवाक्योदियज्ञोऽसौ कालः कलयतां प्रभुः
न चास्य कश्चित् दयितो न द्वेष्यो न च बान्धवः आविशत्य प्रमत्तोऽसौ one word आविशत्य प्रमत्तोऽसौ प्रमत्तं जनमन्तकृत् न चास्य कश्चित् दयितो न द्वेष्यो न च बान्धवः आविशत्य प्रमत्तोऽसौ प्रमत्तं जनमन्तकृत्
न चास्य कश्चित् दयितो न द्वेष्यो न च बान्धवः आविशत्य प्रमद्दोषौ प्रमत्तं जनमन्दकृत्
न चास्य कश्चित्तयितो न द्वेष्यो न च बान्धवः आविशत्य प्रमत्तोऽसौ प्रमत्तं जनमन्दकृत्
He says that he talks a little bit about the Paramatma, and he says that for Paramatma, there's no dveshya. It's not like he hates anybody or he loves anybody more, right? Everybody is the same. So whatever it's what you put is what you get, right? So if you are more attached, then automatically the reaction back is going to be, you're going to be more devoted and you're going to be doing that. If you don't, then you're going to be less. So, but he himself does not, I'm using the word he in a very loose way, but Paramatma himself doesn't discriminate, saying that I like you more or I like you less. It's always neutral, unchanged. It's what you put in that reflects back. Yad bhayat vati vatoyam, suryas tapati yad bhayat varshate devo, bhagano bhati yad bhayat. It says, this out of the word fear is used, but I don't think it's like the fear like the way we think about it. It says because of his control, because of his what they're supposed to do. Everybody things happen according to what they are destined to happen. Like the wind blows because it is supposed to blow. The sun gives out light because it's supposed to do that, right? The rain comes because it is supposed to come. So all of this happens under the guidance of the Paramatma, which is there. यद्भयात् वाति वातोऽयं सूर्यस्तपति यद्भयात् वर्षते देवो भगनो भाति यद्भयात्
यद्भयात् वादिवादोऽयं सूर्यस्तपति यद्भयात् वर्षते देवो भगनो भाति यद्भयात्
यद्भयात् वादिवादोऽयं सूर्यस्तपति यद्भयात् वर्षते देवो भगनो भाति यद्भयात्
यत् वनस्पतयो भीताः put a visarga comma there लताश् चौषधिभिः सह च चौषधिभिः सह स्वे स्वे कालेभिगृह्णन्ति पुष्पाणि च फलानि च. Says everything according to the season, according to the cycle, everything continues to happen in a cyclic, in a systematic pattern, right? Which is यद् वनस्पतयो भीताः लताश्चौषधिभिः सह स्वे स्वे कालेभिगृह्णन्ति पुष्पाणि च फलानि च.
यत् वनस्पतयो भीताः लताश्चौषधिभिः सह स्वे स्वे काले विगृह्णन्ति पुष्पाणि च फलानि च
यद्वनस्पतयो भीताः लताश्चौषधिभिः सह स्वे स्वे कालेभिगृह्णन्ति पुष्पाणि च फलानि च
द्रवन्ति सरितो भीताः again visarga comma नोत्सर्पद्युदधिर्यतः cannot break that word नोत्सर्पद्युदधिर्यतः अग्निरिन्धे स गिरिभिः visarga comma Next, that ir goes away. Bhurna majjati yad bhayat. Sravanti sarito bhitaha notsarpat yudadhiryatah agnirindhe sagiribihi bhurna majjati yad bhayat.
श्रवन्ति सरितो बीताः नोत्सर्पत्युदधिर्यतः अग्निरिन्दे सखिरिभिः पूर्णमज्जति यद्भयात्
स्रवन्ति सरितोपीताः नोत्सर्पत्युदतीर्यदः अग्निरिन्दे सकीरिपिः पूर्णमञ्चति यद्भयात्.
The second line just before the comma, sa giribihi.
अग्निरिन्दे सगिरिभिः पूर्णमञ्चति यद्भयात्.
Majjati.
Oh, majjati. So, majjati. Okay.
Nabho dadati shwasatam, comma, padam yenniyamadadah lokam swadeham tanute, comma, mahan saptabir avritam. Nabho dadati shwasatam padam yenniyamadadah lokam swadeham tanute mahan saptabir avritam.
न बोधदादि स्वसदां पदं यन्नियमाततः लोकं स्वदेहं दनुते महान् सप्तभिरावृतम्
न बोधदादिस्वसदां पदं यन्नियमाततः लोकं स्वतेहं दनुते महान् शब्दभिरावृतम्.
गुणाभिमानिनो देवाः, कम, सर्गादिश्वस्य यद्भयात् वर्तन्तेनुयुगं येषां, कम, पश एतच् चराचरम्. So this is relevant because he says all the demigods, Indra, Agni, Vayu, who control the material nature, right? What is there? They also have to do according to whatever their duties are ordained, they do according to that, which is what Krishna is going to tell later, right? When when the Gopas are worshipping Indra, they say you don't have to worship Indra for rain. It's Indra's duty to do what is required for rain to come. And the rain comes because of the collective karma of people who are in that. You don't have to go give extra bribe to Indra to get the rain to come. It is his duty. He is supposed to do it according to certain conditions, right? Similarly, this Navagrahas, all these planets and the gods who rule those planets, they can't change anything. Okay, they will always do what is supposed to happen, right? If Shani says, oh, Shani is giving me bad or Shani is giving me good, that's because it's because of a karma. What is going to come is going to come. He is a messenger, he's a postman who is just distributing things to you at various things. Sometimes you get good, sometimes you get bad. But the good or bad you get is what is ordained. So there's no use praying to Shani to say, don't do it, because he will give what he's supposed to give, right? You can only pray to the Paramatma to say, help me fight it, or make him not do it. Maybe he can overrule it. But the demigods or any of those other people cannot change anything. They will only do what they are supposed to do, which is what he's saying here. Gunabhimanino devaha sargadishvasya yadbhayat vartante nu yugam yesham vasha etacharacharam.
गुणाभिमानिनो देवाः सर्गादिश्वस्य यद्भयात् वर्तन्ते नुयुगं देशां वसयेदच्चराचरम्.
Second line, yesham, before the comma.
येषां वसयेदच्चराचरम्.
गुणाभिमानिनो देवाः सर्गादिश्वस्य यद्भयात् वर्धन्ये युगं येषां वशयेदच्चराचरम्.
The next line is a little bit hard one because the whole line goes together. There's no comma there. So nantontakara, one word. So nantontakara kalo nadir. Up to that is one word. Kalo nadir adi kridavyayaha. If you want to break at that ra, you can. But it will be a little difficult to say it because the middle word is actually joined with the next one. So anyway, kalo nadir adi kritavyayah. It will flow together. Janam janena janayan, put a plus. Marayan mrityunantakam. Sonantontakara kalo nadiradi kritavyayah. Janam janena janayan marayan mrityunantakam.
सोनन्दोन्दकर कालो नादिरादिकृतव्ययः जनं जनेन जनयन् मारयन् मृत्युनान्दकम्.
सोनन्दोन्दकरः कालनादिर् आदिकृतव्ययः जनं जनेन जनयन् मारयन् मृत्युनान्तकम्.
The first line like kalo.
Oh,
Kalo nadir.
सोनन्दोन्दकरः कालो नादिर् आदिकृतव्ययः. Correct, Rajesh?
Yeah, correct. Yes. Yeah, don't worry if it doesn't land properly because of the way it is. As long as you're saying it together, it's good. इति श्रीमद्भागवते महापुराणे पारमहंस्यां संहितायां तृतीयस्कन्धे कापिलेयोपाख्याने 39
इति श्रीमद्भागवते महापुराणे पारमहंस्यां संहितायां तृतीयस्कन्धे कापिलेयोपाख्याने एकोनत्रिंशोऽध्यायः.
इति श्रीमद्भागवते महापुराणे पारमहंस्यां संहितायां तृतीयस्कन्धे कापिलेयोपाख्याने एकोनत्रिंशोऽध्यायः.
श्रीहरे नमः श्रीहरे नमः श्रीहरे नमः गोपिका जीवन स्मरणं गोविंदा गोविंदा सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय. Thank you everyone. See you.
Have a safe journey, Rajesh.
Thank you everyone. Bye. See you next week. Bye.